I grew up in northern Kentucky for the most part, which is a midwestern part of the United States. And, in terms of Hollywood, I might as well have grown up on Tatooine, a moon of a moon. I didn't know anyone who had made movies, or, my dad had run camera on a couple things because he was a projectionist in college, but that's the closest. It seemed like an impossible entry. And so I spent decades trying to do anything else. Because a lot of filmmakers say in interviews, if you can be happy doing anything else, do that, because there's so much rejection here. And I took them at their word. I think a crucial part of growing up is you learn how your brain works. And this is just kind of how my brain works. As I've gotten older and as society, I feel like, has changed, we're having much more interesting cultural conversations, but they're interesting because we allow for so much more nuance and so many more perspectives. And film kind of it became a way for me to talk about something where I can control the perspective, because I learned, especially in the case of A Ghost Waits, I'm talking about depression and suicidal ideation and loneliness and anxiety. And these are things that are, especially suicidal ideation, are cultural taboos. And I learned that if I can't control the conversation, I'm going to get shouted down pretty quickly. And that was kind of my long way around understanding, art is a machine for empathy, film is a machine for empathy. And this is kind of how I play into that. I think a lot of people, and there is no monolithic person, but I think a lot of people live somewhat thoughtlessly. I think that's been a huge part of what's thrown us for such a loop this year. And I hope it is the legacy of 2020 and being stuck in a place and forced to kind of sit with ourselves and our thoughts, is that we become more thoughtful and considerate. It's not a lack of empathy, because I think we all understand the value of empathy. I hear a lot of people talk about empathy who I've never seen deploy it. It is the work that empathy and kindness takes. It is counting to 10 or 100 or 1,000. And, one of the things that I do, I remember watching the Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, and being very struck by, wow, here's this person who really made it their mission to be an advocate for kindness. And when I looked around and I didn't see anybody doing that, so I decided I wanted to. And, one of the things I found most difficult in the work that it takes is I spend a lot of time thinking about how people hear things. Because I get so annoyed by the whole, I'm sorry if I offended you. I'm sorry that you were offended by, comedy is dead. It's just people who have I feel like people mythologize their own thoughts, he says in an interview. But it's that idea of, I have worked on this joke, I have worked on this thought, I have worked on this idea, and then that would be the end of the work, as opposed to, how can I now prepare it to best be received and interpreted in the intended manner? I think that needs to be much more a part of how we approach things as a community, as a society. It's not that we lack empathy. We understand what empathy is. We understand we lack the infrastructure to do the work that empathy requires. At my lowest, movies have made me feel less alone. I'm going to start there. Movies can change hearts, and movies can change minds, and hearts and minds change the world. Whether it's a documentary that brings to light something that we didn't know about or knew about, but not to the extent, or maybe humanizes a subject that has been, kind of vilified and kind of treated as a caricature instead of a person. But then when it comes to narrative film, yeah, we can kind of Trojan horse a lot of things through art. And in fact, that's been the purpose of art at times in history, has been, if the victors are going to write the history of this moment, then let's start sneaking some stuff in to let people know that that's not all that was going on. Obviously, there have been people who said, I'm going to make a movie that could change the world, and they succeeded. But like Spike Lee made Do the Right Thing, and he wanted to make a movie about the hottest day of the summer, And this is what happens on the hottest day of the summer. Like, it requires so much to make art that functions on many levels, requires so much consideration and deliberation. But yeah, absolutely, art can change the world. It has, it's frankly why we have museums, is because, like, look at where we used to be, look at where we are, and this is why we moved. Yeah. And it's a really cool kind of legacy to be a part of. I'm still wrapping my head around that. This is my first movie, and it's been quite a process, but of kind of understanding that, like, oh yeah, this weird little thing that my friends and I made now is traveling the world, and like, actually, I mean, we had a person after the Glasgow screening, a gentleman came up and said, he basically thanked me for the movie, said that the movie helped him more fully understand a relationship in his life, and that he was excited to share the movie with that person. But yeah, it absolutely can change things. Art can absolutely change things, yes.